Hello back, people. So the Sean Puppy Combs Diddy case, and with Nancy Grace with her syntax regarding Biddy. I didn't watch the whole thing yet, but I believe it was Puff Daddy. He was at the campus of Trinity College. And in other words, there are a bunch of people involved with former director of the FBI, Rob Luskin, and his lawyer, Robert Chevalier, who have been roles with his co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Robert Chevalier, and people and places associated him involved with forced child abusers, leaders of the kids, years apart that were connected. And it shows that they have digital wire crime action methods and phone crime, wire crime action methods with the phones even. And Wethersfield police faked conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and now as an adult, ones that weren't at all. In other words, and the people who did go down there and speak to them, they used that to put them fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. They just put them in the car around me by the time I knew them. Made a fake exception of me knowing Chris Walters. The only time before that had been in a Tiger Cubs. Increasingly, people involved with the Cub Scouts, with the Sal Saviello and a Richard Dombrowski, are involved with people that have wire crime acts and methods and confessed and demonstrated them involved. I don't even know them. They were influenced to make it look like other, with a fake exception, with a South Saviello, with some state police, with an FBI and courts involved with a Jensen family, involved with other countries too, and people on all sides of my house that they've been planting evidences with them, putting fake things, uses of the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie, and it's forced by people that raised him with the intelligence community. This is people through their whole careers involved with predicate acts with facts. So more people are involved with some proven child abusers, leaders of the kids. I recorded them forcing with retired police chiefs. There are retired police chiefs from Wethersfield and their intimate ties, also involved with the house named Cololo and Smith near me, and per the police confessions, and people at Hartford Hospital, and they're refusing to identify themselves. These are courts and people with healthcare that won't communicate with people, and because they already faked conversations with me too at Hartford Hospital, and they forged names of other doctors, also apparently foreign ones, because they put the difference of guilt. The breaching method shows them to do that because they were only capable of going back and then giving our side like it was a side. It never was a side. Russia and China, here and there, we were shared as systems tactical ulterior since before our founders were born. There was a breaching method entrenched here and there that no one wanted. It was northern colonies and southern colonies sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, and that's why and how no one that's why no one addressed how sickly non-distinctly. So please get them on paper, one name and sequence. Judge Napolitano too. They have your Facebook page. These are a bunch of natures of investigations. Investigators have been collusions with all natures of crime scenes, increasingly ones tied to a Perone family, also involved with years of part child offenders. I never saw them on inside of a campus in my life. They're involved with mayors too, with sexual medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, some black KKK, Confederate flag themed, and intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slanders, role, sequence shift planting. A Kerr family and a Perone family said their child abuse and of their family, where they had roles self-value with it. It had something to do with their roles with the corner of the street, corners of streets in Old Wethersfield. Or no, they said commonly the corner of the street at Town Line Drive and the Southstein Highway. They have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal evidences, crimes. The people that know that my name, I don't even know their name. Their neighbors are also tied to more child offenders. The coach of a neighbor is theirs too, involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids, inter-services too. The Marines are involved with this, with digital crime action methods, a bunch of people with the Wethersfield police. It's important to get them on paper. Please, Nancy Grace, if you can get the people on paper, one name and sequence. New Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people with the FBI Director, Robert Luskin, involved with the family members of his co-defendants and their neighbors too, with sexual medical offenders of kids. And probate courts extended family members involved with that, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. not legitimately. And their rules all along Route 3 with a whole bunch of nations and people, all these relatives of the Delafair family's sons. I don't even know this guy. I found out he keeps getting brought up because he was planting fake things in sequence shifts and databases and collusion slash S with all kinds of natures of organized crimes and people involved with it. I never saw them on my street. Increasingly, they're involved with ones with wire crimes with the police, falsified police with them, police reports with multiple police departments, and identity thefts and frauds with the news at the same time. The interbranch forging names, switching names, refusing to identify themselves legitimately. They have a bunch of people at next to Trinity College with the intelligence families, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated at next to Trinity College, sorry, Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, with ones that used to live near me, involved with this. And their extended family members further had roles with more child offenders and people with whiting forensics. There's a Joshua Stryker is also have been involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shift, and planting evidences into databases through time predicate. In other words, he wasn't even my grade. Try to make it look like a sequence shift even the day after he was recorded involved with a girl, increasingly that who confessed that is involved with people with rapes and things like that. And she will tell you she doesn't even know me. She was influenced to pretend other at corners. And they have people involved with identity theft, fraud, saying lied to my girlfriend. Went out, in other words, intercities with the intelligence community. People tied to former Governor Malloy too, with East Hartford, has roles with the FBI and other agencies, and involved with foreign countries and sexual medical offenders of kids with names next to campuses roles, just also faked for them. Everyone's just putting everyone in faked and changed communications with each other, including the interbranch. They're increasingly stacking predicate acts with facts and databases, increasingly as collusion slash S with all natures of crime scenes. So we're going to address how fake people are when they try to care about the types. Of course, you're supposed to care about the interbranch. The only people we could call the police, so they know that and had roles criminally for an influence. But the breach forgiveness is because that's the same problem at countries A through Z, as states A through Z. Because, in other words, we can observe why that and how too, by observing why and how they have. Even black pupils, whites of eyes, nature's communications replaced. What nature shows us about the breaching method that was entrenched. And then what our founders communicated about that, they have it replaced, even though it was communicated. They have our founders' words used dishonestly. Otherwise, people, oh, I read a book. Oh, you know more than an expert. You guys don't even understand the first principle thing. Our founders had to force the rest of the founders, Native Americans and colonists. And there are proofs that Native Americans agreed to use that plan to force the rest of the founders, Native Americans and colonists. And we're still being forced to get it unabridged, and it's not unabridged. We don't have free speech. They've been using fake examples of it and fake transcripts. The database is on a mass scale. It's recorded that's the whole bunch of other natures of organized crimes and roles, private criminal enterprises and overt ones at the same time, involved with the families that have been with the security with the campuses too. How they're training people is not legitimately. We're gonna have to address this. You're gonna have to get the Michael Emmett to make confessions, soon. I mean, he's the one who messed up his career playing games with the FBI and the other people involved too, with the court switching and forging names, and the Wethersfield police chiefs retired, and people not next to me tied to him with whiting forensics with their Facebook page of his campus too, with worse than his upskirt pictures roles that he's in jail for. The people with the jails he's in or was in are also they had collusions with him at that crime scene before he was caught. And then to cover that up, they had roles with the torture method, the names involved with it when their extended family members and people associated with since they were kids. Increasingly, the Connecticut Corrections Offices has roles with people with predicate acts on my street from other areas, including roles with home break-ins that the Marines have collusions with in my area with a Joe DeMoro and with his girlfriend and other people with his girlfriend too at a different time. And she had other boyfriends at the same time. And that has roles with abuses of her by Mr. Neville. And I don't know, Matt Olson and Eric Olson They were influenced to make a fake quick exception by coming into a Mr. Neville's class. Increasingly, intelligence families all along Route 3 have been planting evidences and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. They have something to do with the spot where there was an old and spot and places tied to a guy who I fought Paul Spadafora. Paul Spadafora won the title against Peter Cardona. I never saw him in a gym. Peter Cardona is reportedly tied to a Omni place, and he's got roles with people named Citron in Puerto Rico, involved with the police chief Citron, and his family's intimate ties. Like apparently his daughter has a daughter named Jessica Citron. I never met her. He's involved. He's confessing and demonstrating through others about how he has roles with switching names and something to do with them years before they were at where the Mazzucato Bakery is now in Elm Street, at the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 in Wethersfield. Also with people at the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 and Rocky Hill, with people with the judicial branch officers involved with putting fake things in databases, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Jonathan Mahano also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has sequence shifts with them. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences crimes with a whole bunch of people at New Britain Superior Court. And a Rick Cianfaglione recorded, confessed, demonstrated him, confirmed him involved with the intelligence families near me. I never seen them around them, but they have roles with him. They're tied by this with all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts at the same time, putting fake things in databases. As collusions increasingly with crime scenes. Sometimes worse to them, sometimes worse the overt criminal enterprise, private ones, terrorists. But increasingly the difference of that is exploited too, wherein how they have equal guilt and roles to even fathom means to get away with pretending so long that they can't discern how the black people's whites of eyes was employed by a breaching method. And how and why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And still, with all those narratives and sensibilities behind it, communicating other than what our founders communicated to have communicated for the founding locations. They were using James Madison's plan and the leverage of the founders behind them. In other words, there are proofs that they were Native American too, and we were the Constitution on a bridge, and nature itself, and how its president/chief that also tells us to value it that way. And we have rights that are too numerous to have to list. Judge Napolitano said that one of the amendments says that. Even if we know the actual syntax, we have to understand this because on a mass scale, that's what they do. They play games. And they leave out exceptions with the readings of statutes and precedents. And they lying about the value of their nature to themselves and others as criminal and seditious nature. And it is that way with inherently, actively, and progressively with their finite details, their group detail treatments, and their simultaneous value treatments. Like simultaneously of their voicings for humanity. There have been fake punks, exactly the way the breaching method measures and maintains at each campus, collusions with its telling of American history. Not James Madison's, not our founders behind him. Not honest about, even the Native Americans are not allowed honesty about, there was a clearer than day, a predicate acts with facts delivery system method sustained against them with differences, made the Native Americans fight with Native Americans. If we were honest about that, would have brought up how the same thing had been done against the Europeans and the Africans, where we had the black-white collusions with the identities with the pen, the smart asses, who are criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature, replacing what nature communicates and pretending other, and how getting away with it. We have to understand how they've been using databases and predicate acts with facts methods and wire crime methods. So you can't even call the schools. They'll say, oh, well, hold on, and they'll call you back and then say some fake things and leave messages and all these things. And they'll say, and they keep cutting you off and you never even say anything. And then they just use the fact that there was a whole bunch of things and they put fake transcripts and they're hiding things. They're making, in other words, they have mail crime too, methods too. The interbranch that switch names and forge names. They're identity theft, fraud, slanders, identity rackets. They can't afford to have our history told proper. Oh, these are experts on American history. They're using their knowledge of good and evil to get over on that principle. That was before James Madison was even a president, and he still didn't have free speech. You're going to watch the delusions, too, with the experts on psychiatry involved with all these natures and methods of organized crimes recorded and methods of them right through world wars now. And we're going to examine how James Madison's plan caused the Civil War and caused the North and the South to fight against, to an extent, those torture, extortion, and fact human nature slavery laws that were entrenched against everyone sickly distinctly to keep how sickly non-distinctly functional by the breaching method to sense if anyone's going to address that, because is increasingly against everyone. And there are a whole bunch of positive means to counter that. But one can't do that while entertaining quality aspects of fact human nature, styles of fact human nature, entertain criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw. Everyone has been raw, incapable of affording to be. Short words proper. By nature itself, even with black people's whites of eyes, we have the means to discern how the experts of law have failed black people. It is time we gather round. So there's a Ray Colo and a Joshua Julian, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by students and professionals at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, involved on off the campus with predicate acts with them. There's an officer who used the name Darth Vader who is involved with Puff Daddy and fake black representation and fake white representation, and the difference of who's saying it as white or black. And I'm saying white or black because we have black people's whites of eyes. The skin color, you guys don't even bring that up with the skin color because you can't afford it, because if you bring it up, now you have a logical reason. And soon it gets inseparable from it as it is, the breaching method that we assign what nature communicates there, the revelations that are being generated by why and how. Like, there are other species bodies too with two eyes. We are demonstrated to. Please, Nancy Grace. These are also people involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with WFSB. Increasingly has rules of people tied to body dumping spots since I was in fourth grade. And there's a South Civiello, and people, his neighbors, are increasingly recorded tied to body dumping spots and predicate acts with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices, and people involved with 2 Route Highway where it runs into the Hangdog Lane. Per him, involved with that too there. And that has something to do with the body dumping spots, people with the South Civiello, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences crimes with Eric Jensen. I only saw him in my fourth grade class. I never even saw him around campuses at South Civiello. A bunch of people tied to him and his neighbors have rules of wire crime acts and methods, mail crime acts and methods, interbranch forging and switching names, and rules with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with their families. They have time collusions with that in a whole bunch of different countries, in other words. And there are a whole bunch of people from South Korea involved with people from Hartford Hospital too. I don't know all that pretended other, and I've been trying to plant fake sense and sensibility, trying to cover up, trying to make instances to cover up what's actually recorded, as people involved with this Mark Violet with the FBI, and that girl dragged to her death with a Mike Violet too, involved at Hartford Hospital with people that pretended conversations with me with this Leahy family and this Lombardo family, and people tied to them. Also with, 2 times I had a cooking class. The people that were in my class were involved with predicate acts in my street from other areas. It's recorded clearer than day. We can go back and observe this. 2 times I had a speech class. People involved with that speech class recorded a number of ways involved with organized crime, criminally foreign influence uses of Washington, D.C., and the World Trade Center, and people all along Route 175 involved with predicate acts with my 2 speech class teachers. I never had a personal conversation with them at all. These increasingly people tied to home break-ins in the area too, like the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fairlane, per Heather Hansen and Joe DeMar. And they said that or one of them. They said that they were jogging, and that's why they broke the glass. And they should, and the police should have told them, like I pulled the gun out, and they didn't say anything to my parents when Tony DeMarco called the police, and he was sequence shifting. Increasingly, he has roles with East Hartford Intelligence and with the FBI, former director of the FBI, a bunch of people and places tied to a Robert Chavaret, involved with campuses with sexual and medical offenders of kids. As a lawyer, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members and neighbors, also with a bunch of probate court judges involved in their extended family members and superior courts judges with the same house/S. And people tied to them have been planting evidences next to the, fake exceptions next to the judicial branch offices as the roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases. We could observe there are collusions there with the courts too at the same time, same sequence shift, same criminally foreign influence, the uses of location self-value. You think honest science, names of people of the sciences, let alone one person of a science, let alone all the people together, spoke for the suburbs, let alone New York City, black pupils. The people countering the criminal enterprises, they are being used, remotely shown they need to hide how they've been valuing group differences. Like a criminal enterprise is a grouping for the law. Nature shows us that the identity of the sciences share. It values the predicate of English as a hyper-additional name for a verb to show us the hyper-invisible but still discernible. Like those in the parts of it that come with it simultaneously to see its complete, to learn about and discern its complete identity relationship to itself. Like, for example, the parts of time. We know there's a way that the future that is not even here now. We are already shown the seasons. We know to an extent, even if they never get here again, we know they are only increasingly valued. And to an extent, we could discern that identity of value/value progression that is not one of the seasons alone, but it is all of them and that anyway. In other words, but so for example, the future is one part of the complete identity of forever nature that we could discern distinctly, hyper invisible but still discernible. And part of it that which is active that we could observe now, to an extent, it comes with an extent beyond that we could observe to an extent. Where and how we have the capability of observing what we know. True always, not denying the slight sequence shift, for example. Self-valued, especially while being used remotely, self-valued, or sensing for the breaching method. That's why the self-valued part is important to understand. Because the breaching method made self-valued rules with things that no one self-valued. And then America's founders were born. So Trinity College has a bunch of people involved with intelligence families that grew up near me, that have been putting fake things in databases at courts since I was a kid. And they have roles with predicate acts methods, organized crimes that way. And with names next to the corrections officers and judicial branch officers that are also with positions. Like if you want to enter a different nature of industry, they're right there to cover up life progressions from their roles with attaching everyone to fake conversations as predicate organized crime roles and methods of them. They have whole wire crime methods. Weathersfield Police, that's organized crimes. Attaching me to fake conversations in databases with the police as a kid, now as an adult, and covering that up by pretending such through the news too. Thank God I saw it. Increasingly, they're putting fake ties, fake natures, ties between people, and fake motivations for it too. Increasingly, they have the people involved, all natures of investigations. Investigators are used remotely. They're recording fake things after they already sat other and hiding things on Covington Street in New Britain, Connecticut, and for example, and Zion Street in Hartford, Connecticut. There are intelligence families there who are involved on the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and corrections offices in Wethersfield, and the corrections office on the Wethersfield Hartford town line, and the way that is there too. And there are people all along Park Street through past Hartford and like Newtown, Connecticut. I believe it's Newtown or whatever it goes to, Park Street. It goes to us, whatever town that the ski slope is in. But there's a Park Street, there's a Lena's Pizza, who's also involved with the people between the campuses, and there's an Officer Hunter involved with the court's family members and their intimate ties with foreign and domestic military, and spots next to the Capitol, and involved with places and people associated with this. Attorney Chevrolet, Robert Chevrolet, is increasingly involved with Hartford, Connecticut, with news people, with predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidence of crime with child sex offenders, involved with his co-defendants, FBI director. And with the FBI director's co-defendants too. Thaddeus Grabowski has roles with them, with other natures of organized crimes, and with a John LeConte, with his daughter, involved with putting predicate acts in databases, and people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State Universities have roles with untimely deaths with them, and putting fake natures of ties to me in databases. And they have Puff Daddy involved with this and other celebrities, in other words. And they have the Biddy or something like that is involved with one of the girls that a Joshua Stryker lied about to me. So besides I was a kid, he's one of the people that are putting fake natures of ties to me into fake locations with people I don't even know. In other words, increasingly, if they got that on paper or pretended that on paper, it would be observed what was actually recorded there. And these are people involved with the World Trade Center attack interstates, Washington, D.C., and New York. And these are people from other countries and with the bordering states involved with predicate acts at Trinity College and CCSU with my neighbors and people tied to them involved with some untimely deaths that brought up the principal child abuser's campus to me. A Joshua Julian also has digital crimes with people with the police at Trinity College, also with predicate acts with a Darth Vader, personally criminally involved. Please do what's right on Trinity College and give him up. Get his name on paper with the FBI director too. Don't fear him. Because these are people with some black KKK flag theme, Latino theme, and fake motivations for how and why that got involved. Because they can't afford to have discerned how and why it is actually involved. In other words, and that's their roles next to the state capitol, planting evidence, all kinds of evidences, racketeering roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases in the news at the same time, and the intelligence next to them. These are also people at Elm Streets and Wethersfield and Rocky Hill through time, increasingly next to the Hartford Hospital, and with the people at them with the other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. In other words, it's recorded that they're putting fake and changed things, hiding what's recorded. They have their kids involved. A police chief, Cintron, rather than get one of the police to identify themselves legitimately, he's recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. He's also with a whole bunch of other names all along Route 3 who have roles, all kinds of organized crimes and identity theft, fraud, slanders. And they'll tell you, I never even saw them on campuses in my life. People who make fake exceptions, make it look like they know me because they timed where I was going to be. That's increasingly a problem, not just against me. And the differences of the guilt of that or as a victim, is increasingly a problem because this is at other countries. This is how the breaching method keeps itself. Its roles with that left out, which is worse than just criminal enterprises and terrorists. We could also observe how they have self-valued roles with the same criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Fact, human nature, quality aspects, and self-valued sequence shifts with reception of the Old Testament and of the Quran, for example, where and how that's relative, where people they're pretending they had religious motivations. They are being and have been used remotely. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College intelligence has roles with these other countries and roles with with experts on the languages that involved with my cousin, with people, intelligence families on my street who were influenced to federal evidences crimes on 2 Route Highway, along 2 Route Highway spots through time with people from others. I don't even know all their names. A Chuck Casper sought me out, and people tied to a Chuck Casper keep telling me he's involved with it, and he non-verbally sought me out to confess once when I was a kid, and I never even saw him. And they try to make one fake exception to make sure to make it pretend other in the future in case they had to. With an Arita Swanky, also involved with Pat Vincent's educators. I never had a word of conversation with a Pat Vincent. These are increasingly people involved with mayors, involved with sequence shifts and federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations, roles with people pretending why and how they knew others, hiding why and how they actually became next to each other. I didn't even know I was going to get to go to a movie with Arita Swinky, for example. When they're playing games with who knows each other and why and how, in other words, and where it appears to be natural. And these are people all along Ridge Road with a Mazzucato bakery, and people along Ridge Road I don't know at all tied to a Mark Violet. And they had to hide lipoaggressions from the rules of identity theft, fraud, slanders, others I don't know the names of, with the people next to Central Harvard Hospital. And right where they said that girl was dragged to her death, there were reports that was made up. Even if it was made up, that wasn't made up. They have organized crime with the news involved with the names involved with that, and with that girl reportedly dragged to her death from next to Harvard Hospital. A bunch of people from Harvard Hospital are tied to the same house/S near me, and people tied to them ran in and to hide lipoaggressions, make it look like they had involved with sequence shifts with them too. One of the guys threatened to attack me, tied to a Smith family, and to hurt me when I was trying to talk to a black doctor. I was the only doctor I tried to speak with. The other ones, the Leahy family, I saw that there were collusions with the Dillon family recorded, and the others involved with the child abusers and the untimely deaths on off Trinity College that were connected on my street in Wethersfield. That's in Hartford, Connecticut. No, the same ones were involved with murders and confessions tied to that, intercities, and with New Britain, Connecticut. And the names next to those places at the same time connected. So it was delaying my response. But I was showing that I was giving an effort because these are also people involved. Before the World Trade Center attack, I didn't know all their names, but I recorded the courts and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members, collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases in courts at the same time, and their sources, and political families, and people with a park, like associated people in places associated with a Joseph Dennis. He's increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with former mayors, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slings, with investigators used remotely, criminally foreign influence, also with a John Dennis. I basically never had a conversation with John Dennis. All along Route 175, from the founding location, all along Route 3 and the conjunctions to it and to that. They have roles with former Mayor Gold and his family member, increasingly involved with whiting forensics people too, and crime involved with crime scenes, and then to keep the people's mouth shut, including as the ones with the corrections offices and judicial branch offices, and they're pretending such is about corrections. These are same names had roles with elderly homes. There are proofs that have roles next to the veterans' homes too. What are they doing with this? So Ray Clough and a Rick Cianfaglione said they have roles with a John Maiano, and people in places associated with him, and with the Spada family on Elm Street in Rocky Hill, and other intelligence involved with them, with the judicial branch offices and Wethersfield police involved with predicate acts and federal evidences crimes with other police departments with them too. There has something to do with their roles all along Route 175 from the founding locations and all along, and their roles with people with Korea and inter-services and their roles with corners of streets, with federal evidence crimes, with their roles, with their uses of, by the breaching method, uses names on all sides of criminal civil cases, the news, people at next to the crime scenes, body dumping spots, and the court's names at the same time, even the names of their positions, defended as collusion/S, with the same sequence shifts, fact, human nature, quality, aspects, and natures of collusions, again with other names increasingly. Increasingly, people with Korea are tied to the ones named. There's a Mike Roberts will tell you, I never saw him out in my life. When Eric Jensen tried to make it look like other, in other words, one time that shows the same thing. It wasn't me that went to do that. He was planting evidences, and the roles acting where they're changing things in database. I never had a class with him either. Increasingly, people all along Route 175 have connections to and as roles with the multiple, all kinds of falsified police reports. They even put different officers' names and make confessions about that when they put a charge in no writing, and then they stick fake things in databases through time. So the Britain Superior Court increasingly has years apart child abusers, leaders of kids, and people who had roles with that, increasingly involved with them with that. A DeMorrow family and a Kerr family, they apparently, in other words, they had me go to a party at the kid's house. Everyone was standing there. They're planting evidences with the courts and the foreign, as people all along Route 3 in the conjunctions to it, like the judicial branch officers. So I can't get Judge Napolitano to get them on paper. They won't get on paper. They're using wire. They already used the wire and mail crime methods. They switching, forging names into branch evidences, changing and faking what's rare, making confessions. They're making confessions to me because they already made them to the breaching method at countries A through Z. There are proofs that a breaching method forced, trick, hurt, and persuaded people to blame other things, others, ourselves for things it caused. And it keeps uses of that because you guys are still forcing roles, needs, and natures used to force other things blamed, others blamed, ourselves blamed for things like slavery that James Madison declassified why and how they were roles with slavery. We're supposed to blame it on the human fact, human nature breaching method that sensed anyone not roles. It sensed anyone pretending they didn't have free speech, even if they were a majority of people, and would adapt to that. In other words, the laws made it you have to pretend you have free speech to an extent, otherwise you'd be sensed, even if you're a majority of people, and it would adapt to that. And if it was everyone, just pay attention to how crazy the laws were. Pay attention to what witch trials are about next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, still with other communicated for founders about identity. In other words, shows you interbranch. And so we have political thought entertained. The difference between Republican and Democrat, you guys are playing a shell game as roles preventing mandated law properly from being followed. And then you have cover-ups, collusion, self-value, and that breaching method knew you would. That's why you have criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw prisons names, and foreign and domestic involved with the crime scenes, with the child abusers, leaders of the kids further. Fear to hide plot. I rap a lot. Please, Judge Napolitano, Nancy Grace, get them on paper, one name in sequence. There are proofs all sides of the court, in the court itself, in the news, there's collusions here, and also with World Trade Center predicate acts. Get back. Get them on paper.